Now, I'm going to start with a story about something that happened. It's unfortunate that I did not have a photo of the experience, so I tried to like whip up some like art and just pretend this is a picture of me, right? Um, and the white background is actually Yola. It's 2017. It's a Sunday morning. I am super hungry, right? And the only place where I can find food in Yola is at Jimeta. Jimeta is like this big market. It's this major area, major part of Yola. So when I got there, I was traveling with some of my colleagues. I don't know if this thing is. Oh yeah, so those are my two colleagues, right? Just the person on the left is Chris, the other person is Loba. All of us were hungry, of course. And inside the park, we saw this woman, right? And she was smiling, she was excited to see us, we were excited to see her. And I just walked up to her and I'm like, I saw cooler in her front. And when you see cooler and you're hungry, it means food is about to go down, right? And I walk up to this woman and I'm like, good morning, how market? What do you have? And you know, like, she's like rice, beans, there's fish that we just caught from the river this morning. Like, super excited, right? And the actual fact is that that's not how the conversation went. What actually happened was, when I asked her what she had, everything she said, my brain just interpreted it as blah, 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 blah. That was literally what I heard, right? And the problem is that she was speaking Hausa and she didn't understand English. And I was speaking English, I didn't understand Hausa. So here I was, standing in front of food, the solution to my hunger, and we could not have a conversation. I remember my colleague saying that it's so sad that this woman cannot speak English. And I'm like, dude, I'm hungry. It's sad that I cannot speak Hausa. What actually saved us that morning was there was this random guy. He just came and like everybody was hailing him and he just came and he played translator and saved the day, right? So we ate. But something happened that day. I took that experience because I still had to travel across most of the north. And I just always felt and maintained that as long as I'm in the north, I cannot navigate the north without understanding Hausa. I was picking up a couple of words here and there, right? My vocabulary was pretty rich, right? I knew all the yades, yajiki, yaiki, just kind of like, gets you to have a conversation. I knew Abinchi, right? Because it's super important, right? Like a man has to eat. I knew Nagode because when you say thank you, they'll offer you another one, right? I knew the says too, like say gobe, say the safi, and all of that. Also, pretend the handwriting is art, right? Just pretend it's art. And of course, there is that Olu song, right? I don't know if you guys remember it. Yarinya in a Sonki, so say, decent conversation starter when you can't speak Hausa too. I had to learn Nawane. Nawane is how much because I was traveling by public transport. You had to know how much stuff was. You're going to hear Deride Hamsi, something, right? And it helped. Then, of course, in Nigerian, super important, right? I feel like at this point we should have established my priorities, but in case we haven't, I hate to navigate life with an empty stomach, right? Now this is Ibrahim, interesting guy. I ran into Ibrahim in Daura a few weeks later, after crossing like 7 states across the north. And I ran into Ibrahim and I was like, I am going to prove to this guy that I'm going to boss Hausa for this guy. And I just go, I'm like, Yade, and it's like, Lafia. And I'm like, Tasha, that's like the park, right? And he's like, yes. And I'm like, now and he just goes on this long rant. And I'm like, I felt defeated because the next thing out of my mouth was like, Bar Hausa, right? And he just looked back at me and he's like, then why did you just ask me in English? And when I was putting this story in this slide, I was like, what is going to be the moral lesson for putting this story? I have none, right? I just knew that I had to tell everybody here that Ibrahim in Daura flexed on me, right? And we move. Now, the next question is, why was I even traveling around the north in the first place? Sometime in 2016, some ridiculous idea just flooded my mind. And the idea was that if I did not travel around Nigeria, I'm going to wake up one day and just run mad, right? So I went to my boss and I threatened him politely and told him that I worked in a newsroom then, in a media company. And I told him that, it'd be so nice for us to travel around Nigeria, collect stories, Nigeria culture. And he was like, yeah, I was convincing, right? And they let me travel. Now, before then, I had been across maybe 10 states in Nigeria, visit, come home. But there is something about traveling around an entire country. Nigeria is the third most diverse country in the world, right? Only after Papua New Guinea and Indonesia. Now, you are absorbing all of that, every single state, in a single stretch, in less than 3 months, right? It was an extremely overwhelming experience. And it is just the constant state of having your mind blown again and again and again, right? Now, going back to Lagos, it did something. And it's like, the only way I can describe it is like, when someone is driving really fast and they just step on the brakes immediately, right? The whiplash. That was what it was like now going back to settle back at my desk, right? I'd eaten everything everywhere. And now I was just stuck with the normal rice and stew, right? But it now made me start to think again about why I even like travel, like what I miss the most about the road. And fundamentally, it tends to be around 3 things. Yeah. So, of course, it's the places. The picture there is from Gembu in Taraba State. The most beautiful place I've ever been to in my life. I've not been to many places, I guess. But it's the most beautiful place I've ever been to. Then, food, of course. Now, I have a problem. And the problem is that I always want to take photos of my food, but I always remember when I'm done, right? So I just thought, well, might as well just share it. You get the point, right? Then, of course, the people. I found that as much as I like the places I'd been to, the things that kept sticking with me and staying with me was the people I met. I remember at least one person from every state that I met, right? And it's for all kinds of reasons. It's for reasons like their kindness, right? It's for probably getting even detained in some, like on one occasion, right? But I remember that what made my experience worthwhile was the people. Meaning that if the country was empty, it's probably I felt like worthless for me, right? Now, if I enjoyed seeing people everywhere, it now made me ask that, okay, if people were the thing, what if, as I am trapped in Lagos, I live in Lagos, right? What would it look like if I navigated my environment as a stranger? Basically, you know how you go to a new place, you are so fascinated by things, and the people that you met there are like, what's doing this person, right? So I decided to approach Lagos with those eyes, with that fascination that everything is exciting, everything is wonderful. And one of the things that led me to do was just to randomly start having all kinds of conversations with all kinds of people, right? So it is random things like I'm in an Uber and I find out that my Uber driver, he fought in the Nigerian Civil War, right? And he's sharing amazing stories. And like, what are the odds that this random person fought in the Nigerian Civil War? It is finding out that my water guy, Umar, he sells water and everybody just calls him like, oh, Aboki, Aboki, Aboki. But the interesting fact is that he's actually from Mali. He's Tuareg. He speaks French as well as I speak English. But like not a single person, because I actually went around and asked people, did you know this about this person? And not a single person even knew that about him. We just, of course, collected our water and gave him his money and went on our way. Then there was this babe, Bisola, extremely funny, right? She sells food. And one day we just had like 5 minutes conversation. And like the dreams that she had about what she wanted to do after, they just felt so big for her sister's small kiosk. And so when she told me that her sister doesn't know yet, but she's secretly planning to like save money and go back to school, right? I was not shocked, right? But if I had just interacted with her like the way I would normally interact with everybody else, right? I would have just gone on my way. And you find that everybody feels ordinary until you actually just listen to them. And it sounds extremely basic, and it is just what it is. And what that does for me is that it just creates this thing where I try not to make any assumptions about people. And in the context of Nigeria again, a question that made me ask, I was actually up last night trying to just think about this. And a question that makes me ask is, as a society, as a culture, as a people, our source of distrust and fear of each other, is it safe to say that it is mostly driven by the fact that we do not listen to each other? We literally just take our biases, we inherit them, and we continue to propagate them. And you find that every time you are mad at a person, every time a person pisses you off, every time a person says something ridiculous, a lot of the time, just even listening to them and hearing them out just makes you calmer, right? Now multiply that in a workspace, right? Multiply that by a state or a country. And the question you start to ask is, what type of people would we be if we just took our time and made our time and were extremely intentional about listening to each other? Now, listening to people is not saying that you agree with everything they say. It's mostly a thing of just understanding where they're coming from. You don't need to agree, right? I put this picture here mostly because it reminds me of primary school, primary 4 to be specific. I feel like everybody remembers writing one of those composition, how I spent my last holiday, right? Now, there was this holiday we got back from, and everybody was writing, oh, I traveled to this, I went to amusement park. And then my own composition, I said, oh, I spent it in prison, right? And I actually did spend it in prison, except I did not spend the night there. My mom used to work in a prison, and what that meant was that she always took me to work every day. So imagine me, a little child, like people will be excited about amusement park, and my mom will be like, she'll just come and be like, we're going to the prison tomorrow. We're going to go and see Clifford Orji. And I'll be like that was my own source of excitement, right? And when you hear Clifford Orji, of course, you think about the man-eating cannibal. But the Clifford Orji I knew, right, was actually diagnosed. He was diagnosed with mental illness. I can't remember the details now. And he actually was obsessed, very obsessed, with bread and beans. It's the weirdest thing, right? Now, it doesn't absorb him of the other things he did, right? But by knowing that, okay, this person, like, these are some of the issues he has struggled with, some of the mental illnesses he has struggled with, suddenly we begin to have a better understanding of how to make sure that we do not have another Clifford, right? We begin to think properly about how to make sure that when we have problems, when we encounter them, they are the last times we encounter them. And so to dig more into the prison part, my first chessboard was made by an like a convicted drug dealer, right? The first hack I learned in mathematics, fractions, was made by, I was taught by an ex-armed robber. He actually specialized in highway robberies. Fun fact. Now, like I said, when we begin to have like more robust conversations at all levels about how we see ourselves, how we think about each other, how we even like think about where we are coming from, it is with this insight and just this sense of like common knowledge that we can begin to think properly about the kind of choices we want to make for our future. Now, I changed jobs and I managed to, so I couldn't threaten this boss because his chest was quite big, but I managed to convince him to let us travel again. And this time it was West Africa. It was 14 West African countries. Um, it was Francophone people. Again, I was traveling around Francophone West Africa, and the only thing I knew was we and bon appetit, right? But it was sufficient. I'm here, right? But why am I saying this? I'm saying this because the most fascinating thing is that despite the fact that like it was outside Nigeria, you find that most of the time we all tend to want the same things. Again, this is not a strange or new concept, right? We just generally want the same things, right? We want to feel safe. We want to know that if we live in a place, like nothing is going to like affect the sanctity of our lives, our property, or the people we love. Um, we want to also be cared for, right? We want a society, we want friends, we want a country that cares for us. And we want things. We want to say that, oh, I want to get this thing, and I'm going to work for it, and I'm going to get it, and nothing's going to stand in my way. And of course, we want to say that, like food tastes good, right? Because I've actually never run into anybody who said, like, this food tastes so bad, give me more, right? Nobody has said that before. So the thing for me now is what happens if just as a thing, just as a way to even approach interacting with each other, we just figure out, first of all, that when you want to engage with a person, you first of all start from a place of understanding. What do I have in common with this person? Right? What that does is trigger some aspect of our extremely like tribal nature, and a tribal nature that we have as human beings, like it is innate. We start to figure out how to make and cooperate with these people. We start to figure out how to make things work with these people. And one of the things that happens is that, again, it doesn't excuse the bad behavior of the other person, but suddenly you are more forgiving of the kind of choices they make. You have some more perspective. You approach it with, you tend to want to draw conclusions from a place of context. And that's why, for example, when someone we don't like does something bad, we just say, oh, this person is nonsense. But when someone we like does something bad, we're like, oh, I want to hear that side of the story, right? And it's like, what if we just even tried to just hear everybody's side wherever we can, right? And I think I'm going to leave with one thing, right? It's not a punchline. It's mostly just an assignment. So as a task for the rest of today, or maybe for the rest of the month, or the rest of the year, depending on how committed you are, what would it look like if you actually just, with serious intention, say that, you know what, I'm going to approach maybe one conversation a day, or one stranger, or just one thing a day, and engage with this framework that, look, I might not know this person might be different from me, but I'm just going to assume the best of these people, right? And I wonder what that would do about your perspective about them. And to a large extent, like our broader society, especially in Nigeria. Thank you very much.